Now, if you were to ask me who's my favorite guitarist of all time, it has to be, for me personally, the one and only Jimi Hendrix. Although he sometimes played the guitar with his teeth. And occasionally setting his guitar on fire, more impressive to me was the fact that he was an absolute original who could write brilliant songs, and his technique was years ahead of what anyone else was doing at the time. And that's what we're gonna talk about today, Jimi's technique. If there were 3 things you wanna learn from Jimi Hendrix, 3 essential techniques that you wanna steal from Jimi Hendrix, what would that be? Well, that's what we're gonna talk about in this video. First thing we're going to take a look at is the way he's handling his chords. Jimi Hendrix, throughout most of his career, played in a 3-piece band, so there was no rhythm guitar player backing him up. So he created this technique where he's able to switch in an instant between playing chords and playing a solo or a lick. And how is he able to do that stuff? Well, to explain it, we have to start at the beginning. Remember the first time you learned the dreaded F chord? And at one point, you probably discovered that you can play this bar chord anywhere on the fretboard, right? So here's the thing. Jimi Hendrix would never ever play it like this. He would use, instead, his thumb, mute the A string, with the thumb, ring finger D string, middle finger G string, and index finger pressing down the 2 top strings. And this chord sounds identical to a traditional bar chord. Not much difference at all, but the difference is all the possibilities we now have. It's very easy to play a solo and go back to the chord. Why? Well, because all the fingers are already in place. Now, just like any other traditional bar chord, you can play this chord anywhere on the fretboard and do a little bit of soloing wherever you prefer.
Jimi Hendrix could play that rock and roll. I used to be singing rock and roll, getting woo, 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 be gone. He have that thing just romping and tumping all up under my toes.
That was a song called Dear Mr. Fantasy by Traffic, also recorded live by Jimi Hendrix. And you can clearly hear all those great embellishments that make the chords really come alive. Now, when you listen to the original song by Traffic, it's really quite simple. Great riff at the end. Very simple chords, A, G, and D. Now normally the other way you could play this is with bar chords, of course. But But of course, we've already discovered that Hendrix doesn't play the A and the G with a traditional bar chord, the thumb, remember? Now let's see what kind of embellishments Jimmy would typically play. First off, we've got the hammer-on pull-off with the ring finger on the G string. Let's see how that sounds. Already it sounds so much better. Do you notice, by the way, it's a very subtle thing. You cannot play it like this. It doesn't have any soul if you play it like that. It needs to be very subtle, so there's a lot of dynamics in there as well. Now, let's see if we can add one more thing onto this deep power chord. Very Hendrix-like is to play this in front of it. Like that. So now we have...
Like, he played 24 hours a day. I mean, he was always playing. You always knew that when Hendrix was in town, he was jamming here, he was jamming there, he was jamming here, but he was always playing.
You take a song like Purple Haze with that iconic intro riff. The notes are relatively simple. But Jimmy uses a certain technique which allows him to play very loud. Quite a big difference, isn't it? So what is he doing? Well, he's using his famous Hendrix muting technique, and this is how it works. Here we have the index finger, and I'm gonna play the 7th fret, and I'm gonna use this muting technique. So it's a matter of pressing down this A string and muting the other strings with the index finger. So I need to stretch my index finger somewhat, and the thumb is also muting the low E string here. And now you're able to play all the strings and have that aggressive Hendrix type of sound. The next step is to see if you can play it at different places on the fretboard. Now many beginners will run into something like this. If you run into that problem, you simply are pressing down too many strings that you should be muting. The next step is to see if you can also use the same technique on the middle finger and the ring finger. And it doesn't really matter on what fret, just stay on the A string for now and see if you can get the same result. Then you want to be able to do that on all the strings except the high E string. Let's see. And a good way to practice is to take a well-known song and see if you can play it with the same technique. Something like... This should be interesting. Doesn't sound too bad, does it? There you go, the Hendrix muting technique. Okay guys, so what were the 3 techniques? Number 1, to instantly change between chords and doing a solo. Number 2, doing those beautiful Hendrix embellishments. And number 3, his revolutionary muting technique. Now to finish off, I'll play 3 pieces of Jimi Hendrix's songs, and each one illustrates one of these techniques.